and I'm Goofy.
Oh, you sure are.
Oh, got him.
A Kingdom Hearts TV series has been talked about for a surprisingly long time. Back in 2003, an initial attempt at adapting the first game for television was in development for Disney Channel, but sadly that never got picked up, with SquareEnix instead wanting to focus on developing new games. A few years after that, Seth Kearsley, who was developing that first attempt, supposedly re-pitched the idea to Disney, but it seems that nothing of that version came to fruition either. And now, just in the last couple of years or so, rumors have started to pop up that a Kingdom Hearts TV show in some form was in development for Disney+. If you guys know anything about me, you'll know that I've been championing the idea of a Kingdom Hearts TV show for ages, specifically as an animated series. Not just because I think the story and the way it's structured just lends itself to a serialized format like television really well, but it also has the potential for the series to reach an even vaster audience beyond the games. And if you look at Disney's track record with other recent animated shows, that says it all. Heck, I even have my own ideas for how I'd adapt the series for TV, but that's probably a video for another time. Today, I want to talk about an aspect of this hypothetical TV series I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, which is casting. In the original scoop for this show, it was mentioned that in addition to this show more than likely being an animated project, which, for the record,
Good.
a lot of the reporting mentioned that production was underway with casting, which leads me to believe that none of the original voice actors from the games would be returning. Which, I'm not gonna lie, kinda stings. But in saying that, I am also kinda curious to see other actors portray these characters and see what kind of new dimension they can bring to them. So, that's what we're doing today. We're gonna play casting director and fancast this Kingdom Hearts TV show. Like I said, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this in depth, so I'm interested in what kind of angle I can approach this with. The closest I've seen is this video that Ava from Absolutely Everything About did, which I highly recommend, as she even goes the extra mile by diversifying the cast as much as possible, which I really commend her for. After all, representation matters, and applying those attributes to a cast of characters in a series like Kingdom Hearts would be extremely welcome. But this is Hollywood, baby, so more than likely they're just gonna stunt cast the hell out of this thing with a bunch of boring white people. For those unfamiliar with the term, stunt casting is usually when a production uses celebrities in high-profile roles to generate more publicity for a project. Most studios, especially Disney, employ this tactic for a lot of their projects, from the various Marvel characters to those classic Disney remakes that just won't go away. Dear God, why does this look like this? It also doesn't help that this insistence on celebrity casting is especially used in animated films, with studios like DreamWorks and Illumination using this tactic in full force. I'm looking at you, plumber. Which is funny to say because Disney's animated projects, despite doing the same thing most times, hell, they're the ones who started this practice to begin with, doesn't feel as distracting, as some actors do feel properly casted for their specific characters. My point being, I figured if Disney is going to cast this Kingdom Hearts TV show full of high-profile celebrity names, I want to steer towards some ideas that wouldn't be totally awful. In fact, I have a list of actors and actresses that I have kept very far away from this list just to show that some thought is being put into this process. And an extra thing to note is that we are only covering characters original to the series, as I imagine the regular Disney voice actors will reprise all of their roles, and same with the usual Final Fantasy voice actors as well. With a couple notes though, the Final Fantasy VII characters I imagine being played by their remake actors, mostly because I'm biased and I just really like that cast. And the only change to the Disney voice actors that I would make is that Mickey would be voiced by Chris Diamantopoulos. Seriously, just imagine Paul Ruddish Mickey Mouse saying some of this dialogue. It's beautiful.
What happened?
Anyway, let's get to the actual casting. We're going to break this down by casting each character as they are introduced in each subsequent game, just as a season of TV would introduce a new character. Like, yeah, no shit, Devin. Also, because we have a lot of characters to go through, my descriptions are going to be quite rapid fire. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's not stall further. For Season 1, based on Kingdom Hearts 1, we have 4 original characters to cast, the OG Destiny Islands trio and our villain Ansem. Let's start with our main boy Sora. Believe it or not, Sora was actually one of the easier casting decisions to make, as I feel that there are a lot of young actors working today that would fit the bill of the relatable, optimistic everyman that Sora exhibits. So naturally, with so many actors to choose from, I predictably went with one of the kids from Stranger Things.
Stupid.
Out of the 4 main boys that Disney would go with, I felt that, to me, Noah Schnapp was the obvious choice to play Sora. Finn Wolfhard was also in contention, but I placed him on the banned list for having a little bit too much mainstream appeal on the level of Tommy and Timmy over here. Anyway, back to Schnapp. Watching him in his expanded tenure on Stranger Things past season 1, I could see a lot of potential for him to bring that sense of charm and positivity that Sora has. There's also plenty of material that showcases Schnapp's dramatic side as well, which would also be a welcome addition to Sora as a character in later seasons.
See how you're leading us here? You're guiding the whole party, inspiring us. That's what you do. And see your coat of arms here? It's a heart. And I know it's sort of on the nose, but that's what holds this whole party together. Heart. Because, I mean, without heart, we'd all fall apart.
Moving on to Riku, this was also a pretty easy casting decision. However, unlike Sora, where I had plenty of options to choose from, for Riku I really only had one specific actor in mind, and that was Jack Dylan Grazer. For starters, Grazer has already been doing voice work for Disney in the past couple of years on projects like Luca and Ron's Gone Wrong, so the connection for him to work with Disney again is a no-brainer. But my main point of casting Grazer as Riku was something that many of Grazer's roles have portrayed to great effect: unabashed confidence. Looking at something like Freddie Freeman in Shazam is a great example of how he could bring Riku, especially Kingdom Hearts 1 Riku, to life. Also, just a quick point I have in my notes here, Bai King playing a Bai King, you love to see it.
I just thought that maybe he'd change his mind. Honestly though, I get it. He's better off without me. You are too.
Now, in contrast to Sora and Riku, Kairi was actually the hardest of the trio to cast, as many of the actresses I felt Disney would go with, like McKenna Grace, Bella Ramsey, or Millie Bobby Brown, I felt were a little too mainstream for my liking. However, after a little more digging, I landed on a perfect pick: Elsie Fisher. Fisher has an impressive resume behind her, and I was surprised to find quite a bit of it was already in doing voice work for shows like Sophia the First, Masha and the Bear, and films like the 2019's The Addams Family and the first 2 Despicable Me films. But her best known work, I'm sure a lot of people already know, is in Bo Burnham's directorial debut 8th Grade, and yeah, Fisher is amazing in this. But believe it or not, in spite of her great talent, that wasn't what actually sold me on Fisher in this role. You see, something I would really want to lean into when adapting Kairi is keeping a lot of that spunk and sass from Kingdom Hearts 1 intact, and Fisher, based on interviews and her social media presence, she has in spades. Like, for real, her Twitter has some of the best shitposts out there. My candidate for Kairi without question.
Just because things are happening to you right now doesn't mean that they're always gonna happen to you. And things will change, and, you know, you never know what's gonna, happen next, and that's what makes things exciting and scary and fun.
Now, in contrast with all of that, Ansem was actually the most difficult character to cast, not just of the 4 original characters to Kingdom Hearts 1, but of the villains in general. We're looking for an actor who has a commanding presence but won't overshadow other baddies who will show up later. It was difficult to narrow down, but for me, the actor who came the closest to nailing what I was looking for was Temuera Morrison. One really only needs to look as far as Morrison's work in Star Wars as both Jango and Boba Fett to see that he has both elements of Ansem's personality on great display. As Jango, he shows he can be calm and methodical, and as Boba, he has all the animosity and rage that comes from the power of darkness.
Well, who's there?
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.
Now, in my hypothetical version of a Kingdom Hearts TV show, instead of jumping into a second season, I imagine the events of Chain of Memories would be portrayed through like an hour-long special or OVA or something like that. There are a couple other titles in the series that would be treated like this too, and I'll point them out when we get to them. For now, on to casting Chain of Memories. Let's begin with the most important character in Chain of Memories, Naminé. It's actually quite funny because many of the names I had lined up for Kairi I also felt could work really well for Naminé too, and the one that stood out the most to me was Annaguri Rice. Although she had the spunk that would make her great for Kairi, something that Rice had that made her more a shoo-in for Naminé was a slightly softer and more naive tone, as shown in stuff like her appearances in the MCU Spider-Man films and her great performance in Shane Black's The Nice Guys. Someone to really hone in on the kind and empathetic nature of the character, while also being able to give the character an energy that makes her exciting.
It's okay. You're gonna be alright. I'll get help.
Also, I have in my notes here that Jack Dylan Grazer would also play Riku Replica, because duh. Now, when it comes to Ansem the Wise, or Diz as he's known in Chain of Memories, my first thought was that Corey Burton, his current voice actor, would come back to play the character, but with the character originally being played by the late great Christopher Lee, I imagine Disney would want to go the same route in casting a prolific actor of a similar caliber in the role. Someone who could give a Shakespearean-level performance to material like this. And I don't think there's an actor more qualified for that description than Timothy Dalton. There is no actor I can think of who can go from playing one of the most iconic characters in all of media with prestigious credits to his name on both stage and screen, to playing really unconventional and downright silly characters, but still managing to play each role completely straight. That is right in Kingdom Hearts' wheelhouse, and Dalton would be an excellent addition.
Every attempt I've made to set things right has failed. That's why I am totally abasing myself by summoning the likes of you.
Now, with Axel, I was really close to going with Aba's pick of John Boyega because 1, I love the idea of Axel being played by a person of color, and 2, Boyega has a lot of swagger and charm that would suit Axel nicely. But after some more digging, a very specific voice popped into my head, and I just couldn't let it go for this character.
There are wind chimes where my ding-dong should be.
Without question, Jason Mantzoukas is my pick to voice Axel. The man has a lot of balls-to-the-wall energy that I think would make his version of Axel super entertaining. Plus, Mantzoukas has great range as an actor, too. You look at someone like Adrian Pimento in Brooklyn Nine-Nine as an example of being able to play the cold-hearted badass, but still have a playful and wild side to him.
Great. Who are we killing? I want 2 kids. That's a rule. But that rule is negotiable if the kid's a dick.
I'll be upfront with Marluxia, this was one of the easiest casting decisions I made for this project. To preface, I'm trying my best to limit the amount of major MCU actors to be included on this list, with half of them making up the banned list, but I had to make an exception for Tom Hiddleston. We are looking for an actor with an eloquence and charm while still being able to play sly and conniving, and I don't think there's an actor more fitted for that than the man who brought the God of Mischief to life. He just exudes that kind of energy that would make him perfect to play a Kingdom Hearts character, especially someone like Marluxia.
If I'm for the axe, then for mercy's sake, just swing it. It's not that I don't love our little talks, it's just... I don't love them.
The same could also be said when it came to casting Larxene. It took a bit to narrow down, but as soon as I landed on Jenny Slate, her voice coming out of the character, much like Jason Mantzoukas as Axel, just sounded right. Taking something like Bellwether from Zootopia shows she has the potential to play vapid and antagonistic super well.
Well, you should have just stayed on the carrot farm, huh? It really is too bad. I did like you.
I had a couple different names lined up for Vexen, but ultimately I decided to go a little off kilter with Stephen Merchant. As a comedian responsible for bringing us projects like Extras and the original UK version of The Office, Merchant has no problem being able to turn on the kooky charm that a mad scientist like Vexen can exhibit, but if you know the plot twist of Portal 2, you know that he can also portray Sinister quite well too.
You know what you are? Selfish. I've done nothing but sacrifice to get us here, and what have you sacrificed? Nothing. 0. All you've done is boss me around. Well, now who's the boss? Who's the boss? It's me.
Similarly to Vexen, for Zexion, I wanted to go in a slightly different direction that I'm sure people were expecting. I had a few names lined up that I felt suited the character as we know them, but when I decided to go with Robin Lord Taylor, it came with an alternate take on Zexion that I didn't think of before. Obviously, Taylor's most popular role to this date was as the Penguin on the TV series Gotham, with that version of the character really lending itself to Zexion well already as a conniving and manipulative schemer. But another element of this version of Penguin that I found really interesting is the idea of a loser trying to prove himself. With Zexion being quite reclusive in his time at Castle Oblivion, I thought this could be an interesting angle to try out, and I think Taylor could nail that angle of the character no problem.
You are a man of monkish virtue. You have no vices to expose, so threats of personal violence will only harden your resolve, huh?
Now, Lexaeus is hard, because really any prominent voice actor with a deep voice and rugged tone could fill this role no problem. However, Clancy Brown could offer us something extra. He has a very distinct presence as a performer from having experience as both a screen actor and a voice actor, making it easy for him to tap into Lexaeus' angry, bombastic side, as well as the stoic, quiet nature of the character.
I could kill you, and you would just come back as if nothing happened. But are you afraid to die?
And now we move on to Season 2, which would be based on Kingdom Hearts 2. Before we jump into the prominent characters, I'll just throw this out there. Hayner, Pence, and Olette are just going to be portrayed by their Kingdom Hearts 3 voice actors. Mostly because I think any voice actors could work for them, and I think their actors in Kingdom Hearts 3 are pretty good already, so there you go. Now, on to the major characters, starting with Roxas. Finding an actor for Roxas is funny because you're essentially looking for an actor who can give all the similar traits of Sora, but with a bit of an edge to them. I went through a couple names, but when I boiled it down, I found Alex Wolff to be a really interesting choice. Wolff has been making headway already as a really compelling young actor in recent dramatic stuff like Hereditary and Old, as well as lighter material in stuff like the recent Jumanji films. I think he has the potential to tap into what makes Roxas so engaging, while also being able to offer his own spin on the character.
It's not like you're the only one who's living dangerously here. This is the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life. And now look at me. Paying the price.
Now we cast the rest of Organization 13. This first one, I'm just gonna make short and sweet. Idris Elba as Xemnas. Why?
He's a sexy guy. He's just a sexy guy.
It really is as simple as that. Plus, you look at something like Knuckles in Sonic 2 as an example of him really having dedication to even the silliest of roles. Again, perfect for something like Kingdom Hearts.
Now, you have no idea who the hell I am or where I've come from, and I'm not about to tell you my whole life story. All I need to be to you and everybody on this dome is a fixed point. The last man standing. I do not need your sympathy or your admiration. All I need is your compliance and your fighting skills. And if I can't get that, then you can go back to the wall that I found you crawling on. Do I make myself clear?
Xigbar was interesting to nail down, as we need someone who can have a sinister and commanding presence, but also have a wit and sardonic charm. I couldn't see a lot of big name actors in this role, but when I landed on Boyd Holbrook, it just kind of felt right. Holbrook has done a lot of great work in recent years on shows like Narcos and The Sandman, and in movies like Logan, for which his role as a sarcastic scumbag was ultimately what made me think he'd be perfect for Xigbar.
As I live and breathe.
I'm a fan, by the way.
So, I'll admit, my casting for Saïx may come across as a bit unconventional. Saïx is typically portrayed as a by-the-books, emotionless hard-ass who only ever cares about the end goal. So, I imagine some people would find it very weird that I would cast an actor a bit far from that description with Aaron Paul. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, Jesse Pinkman as Saïx does sound weird at first glance. But when you strip away the whole, bitch, 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 yeah, bitch! From the performance, you see a lonely and broken person trying to find their place in the world, being undermined by the corrupt and downright evil people more or less ruling over them. That's essentially Saïx's whole MO to a T, especially after what we learned in Kingdom Hearts 3. I really think Paul's performance in Breaking Bad, and even his performance as Todd in BoJack Horseman, really show that he can nail that tragedy of the character. Plus, he's already done work for Square in the past with that Final Fantasy XV movie everyone forgot about, so we have the connection for him to work on another adjacent project with them.
Now, if you don't want that to happen, I suggest you stop whining like a little bitch and do what I say.
Much like casting Lexaeus, Xaldin I feel can really be played by any prominent voice actor, and even more so here as Xaldin feels so flat as a character, anyone can bring any sort of new type of personality to him, and it would be quite refreshing. Hence why me casting Kari Payton in the role was kind of a no-brainer. Kari just has this genuine swagger and grandeur to his characters that I could feel lend itself to Xaldin in great ways.
There's a saying. The pessimist looks down and hits his head. The optimist looks up and loses his footing. The realist looks forward and adjusts his path accordingly.
Finding an actor for Demyx was tricky, as a lot of big-name actors with musical backgrounds that I had lined up couldn't quite fit the bill of what I was looking for initially. That is, of course, until I landed on Darren Criss. Yes, the Star Kid alum that Glee fans wouldn't shut up about for years. Sounds like a natural choice. But looking even deeper with Chris's descent into voiceover work in stuff like Superman, Man of Tomorrow, and Batman vs. TMNT, he clearly has shown he has the chops to bring a character like this to life.
Jeez! Oh, Brad! You scared the crap out of me. Warn me before you talk.
Finally, we come to Luxord, a character who up until recently kinda sat in the same tier as Zaldan and Lexaeus as someone with not a lot of distinct characterization. That is, again, until Kingdom Hearts 3 came around and showed us that maybe this prim and proper gambler may have an interesting story to tell in the future after all. As such, I wanted to look for a big name that could easily bring out Luxord's eloquence while also displaying an air of mystery, and I don't think there was an actor more suited for that distinction than Alfred Molina. An acclaimed thespian with credits spanning both stage and screen, Molina without question has the chops to bring even a small supporting character who monologues on the sidelines a level of gravitas and charm that will surely keep him memorable for the foreseeable future.
Oh, bravo, boys and girls. Bravo. Except for you. You were god-awful.
Now we move on to 358 Days Over 2, which would also be portrayed as an OVA similar to Chain of Memories. And as it turns out, we only have one new character to cast. But it's an important one. When it came to casting Shion, initially I was just going to have our Kairi actress Elsie Fisher play the role like the two are voiced in the games. However, I went back to another one of Aba's videos that really piqued my interest. Yep, that one. The idea of Shion being an allegory to just straight up being portrayed in the text as transgender is so inspired, as it just leans even more into Shion's character arc and Days' overall themes of identity and self-discovery. So, casting a trans actress as Shion should be a no-brainer. And even more lucky for me, there's a specific trans actress working today that I think would be perfect for this role, and that of course is Hunter Schafer. Schafer's work on HBO's Euphoria is so raw and gives me all the confidence in the world that she can bring that level of gravitas to Shion's story. Plus, she's also had some recent voice acting work with the English dub of the film Belle. She's more than capable and has my vote with ease.
But then I think about beautiful things that are also broad and deep and thick, and I think of something like the ocean.
We now move on to Season 3, which would be based on Birth by Sleep. I'll be honest, this is some of my favorite stretches of casting I've done, so let's get right into it, starting with the Wayfinder trio. I'll get this one out of the way quickly. Obviously, Alex Wolff, who's Roxas, will play Ventus as well, because duh. Also, while Wolf's dramatic stuff shows he'd be great as Roxas, his lighter material also shows he'd kill it as Ven as well, so works out nicely. The same goes for Noah Schnapp as Vanitas too, just to throw that out there. Now, on to our other two leads, starting with Aqua. Honestly, Disney has two options here. Either go with the bland first option of casting any random white woman like Florence Pugh, Anya Taylor-Joy, or, if I had a personal pick, Daisy Ridley, or they go with the more interesting and correct option with a person of color in the role, to which my pick is without question Jessica Henwick. Henwick has been on a roll in the last few years, going from killing it on Game of Thrones to headlining major blockbusters like The Matrix Resurrections and Glass Onion, and of course, being the only good part of Iron Fist. And that's an impressive feat. In a majority of her roles, Henwick shows that she has the compassionate badass routine down to a science, and overall has a liveliness that would greatly benefit Aqua's character.
We did not give you permission to kidnap former CIA personnel and their family members.
And now we move on to Terra, and I'll be honest, I thought I had this casting in the bag. My main source of finding an actor for Terra was finding someone with enough likability that it could offset the woodenness that comes from Terra's initial portrayal in the games. So I thought I had a bullseye when casting Simu Liu. Simu has off-the-charts charisma that I felt could give Terra that energy that he was missing, so this should be a locked-in casting choice. Then I saw the problematic receipts and inflating ego at the time of writing this and promptly tossed this idea out the window. Okay, so who else could fill Terra's shoes? Well, after some soul-searching, I managed to narrow it down to one true decision. Zuko from the Last Airbender movie. Seriously though, Dev Patel has the makings to bring out the best version of Terra. I make jokes, but much like Jessica Henwick with Iron Fist, Patel was the one young actor in that last Airbender movie that I could tell was giving it his all with the material given to him. Then of course you have his acclaimed role in Slumdog Millionaire and his recent stuff like in David Lowery's The Green Knight, a role which, correct me if I'm wrong, is literally just Terra, like a warrior who gave into his darker impulses and now has to go on a journey to prove himself to his family and peers. That is literally Terra.
Very well. You laid down your challenge. I accepted it, and accept it still.
Now, onto our two Elder Keyblade Masters, starting with Ericus. Originally, I was just going to have Mark Hamill come back to play the character, but due to Ericus's distinct resemblance to Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, I think casting an Asian American actor in the role would be a much smarter choice. Originally, I was thinking of casting someone like George Takei in the role, continuing the trend of Ericus and Xehanort being played by famous sci-fi actors, but I decided I wanted to skew the actor age slightly younger for these characters. And I'm glad I did, because I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once for the first time recently. A sin, I know. And I cannot put into words how perfect Ke Huy Quan would be as Ericus. Talk about the comeback of the century! Quan has all the right attributes for Ericus, as well as some qualities that would make his version of the character stand out. He can play the stern and commanding badass, but he could also tap into the kindness and optimism of Ericus's younger days to really flesh out the dynamic relationships Ericus could have with both his students and Xehanort.
If you fall for the temptations, you invite contradiction, chaos. The clay pot could shatter and you could die. Or far worse.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Xehanort. Just like Ericus, I was initially just going to have Christopher Lloyd come back for the part, but sadly Lloyd is getting up there in years, and I think skewing for a slightly younger older actor would be a smart move. But one thing I still wanted to carry over with casting Xehanort is looking at famous sci-fi actors. So far we've had Spock, Roy Batty, and Doc Brown have a crack at the role, and all have done great at doing their own thing with it. So with that thinking in mind, it really shouldn't come as a surprise that one of the Doctors was going to play this role at some point, right?
Admit it, you've all had this exact nightmare.
For my money, Peter Capaldi has all the right makings for a really cool portrayal of Xehanort. He has the calm, collected, and eloquent demeanor, but also has the bubbling rage that could burst at any minute. Plus, Capaldi has down that crazy old man stick too, so he could slip that right into Xehanort no problem. But the biggest reason for casting Capaldi as Xehanort? The eyebrows. Look at those things. Those are 100% Xehanort eyebrows. Case closed.
A life this long. Do you understand what it is? It's a battlefield, like this one. And it's empty. Because everyone else has fallen.
Now, before we jump into our next OVA, I'll briefly get casting for Season 4, which would be based on Dream Drop Distance, out of the way quickly, as we only have one character to cast, that being young Xehanort. And even though we don't meet young Ericus until Kingdom Hearts 3, we might as well cover him now as well, so let's talk about him. Starting with young Xehanort, we're looking for an actor who can exhibit all of the similar traits that Capaldi would more than likely bring to the elder version of the character, while also being able to bring their own spin on it. And while I was having a difficult time trying to narrow it down, I found a lot of potential in Jack Reynor. I'll admit, after first being introduced to Reynor in Transformers 4, I didn't really think that much of him, but after seeing his performances in stuff like Sing Street and Midsommar, I was immediately convinced that Reynor had all the right qualities for this role. Someone who could give off the same calm intensity as Capaldi, but also having an ability to play snarky with such conviction, which for young Xehanort, I'd say is a great quality.
You get to follow the path that I macheted through the jungle that is our mad family. I was alone with them for 6 years. You think they're crazy now?
Moving over to young Ericus, unlike his older counterpart who's a little more no-nonsense, we're looking for someone a little more laid-back and lighthearted. And immediately my mind went to Manny Jacinto. Watch any episode of The Good Place and you can see that he's more than capable of bringing out the character's naive personality, showcasing the stark contrast of who Ericus becomes as a master.
I'm losing by 3, meditating to calm myself down. I'd be winning by like 1,000,000 if I could play as the Jags instead of playing against the Jags. I hate scoring against my own favorite team.
And now we have our last title to cast, which is Union Cross, or the Key Saga. This would all be condensed into 1, maybe 2 OVAs, which would go between seasons 3 and 4 of this hypothetical TV show. I am casting all of the major players from this saga, but I'll be real with y'all, there's not a lot of characterization to work with here. So some of these names I just kind of pulled out of a hat that I thought could work, so yeah, here are the results. For Ephemer, he's a kind-hearted, loyal leader type, so I just kind of pulled from my Sora choices. I think Jaden Martell could do the role just fine. He's got that kind, unassuming nature down, and if he pulls on some of his darker roles like Knives Out, that could be pretty unique. Skuld is pretty much the sweet but fierce girl of the group archetype, and Maisie Williams played the best version of that archetype on Game of Thrones, so yeah, give it to her. Brain is a very brooding but sassy and clever type of character, so let's say Sonny Suljic for this one. I mean, Atreus from God of War isn't that far off in that department. Okay, now Strelitzia I did put some thought into, because this character is potentially going to be very important going forward, so we want a slightly big name to go off of here. And I think an up-and-comer perfect for Strelitzia is Rachel Ziegler. Ziegler has been on a roll out of the gate with her debut in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, and I think can really hone in on what we know about Strelitzia, namely that sense of whimsy that can add some instant likability to the character. Now, before we move on to the foretellers, I want to talk about Chirithy for a second. Really, we could just have Laura Jill Miller come back, but if we decide to have another voice actress come in for the role, I'd personally love seeing Ashley Johnson take a crack at it. Johnson has a very dynamic voice that could allow her to portray Chirithy in a variety of ways.
Okay.
Okay, on to the foretellers. Now, this was a choice that made all the sense in the world to me, because the Key Saga really leans on the idea that the foretellers are the old guard of Keyblade wielders, and that their legacy is to be passed on to the next generation. So by that logic, would it not make sense to have the foretellers be played by the metaphorical old guard? Or in other words, the original Kingdom Hearts cast. That's right, I'm bringing back the reincarnation theory, baby! We've got Kyrie's voice actress Allison Stoner as Ava, Roxas/Ventus's voice actor Jesse McCartney as Gula, Riku's voice actor David Gallagher as Ira, Aqua's voice actress Willa Holland as Envy, and Terra's voice actor Jason Doring as Aced. Tell me y'all see the vision too, right? And yeah, even though it doesn't totally fit the reincarnation bit, I do still think it makes sense for Luxu to be played by Sora's voice actor, Haley Joel Osment. He can just apply his naivete and nervous questioning of the world from Sora and slip it into Luxu no problem. Thus, we are left with casting one last major character, the Master of Masters, an enigmatic wildcard whose motives are as strange and questionable as his own personality. This is a big one because we have another major player for the future and we want a big name to really draw on that scope that this character is going to have. And upon going through the names that I thought could do this role justice, there was just one that I found to be so breathtaking.
You're breathtaking! You're all breathtaking!
You can't look me in the eye and not say that Keanu Reeves as the Master of Masters would not be an inspired choice. Yeah, most people know Reeves' acting prowess as a brooding badass in John Wick and The Matrix, but when you look at his other roles in stuff like Bill and Ted, and even small silly stuff like in Toy Story 4, you can tell that Reeves is drawing on his natural goofball personality. Added with his earnestly wise demeanor, you take those three elements that Reeves has to work with, and you have one hell of an interesting portrayal of this character.
Why?
It's personal.
And with that, we have cast all the major characters in Kingdom Hearts should this Disney Plus TV show come to fruition. Overall, I think this was a pretty fun experiment. It really made me think about these characters a little deeper, even the smaller characters, and it made me appreciate them a lot more. These characters are the backbone of this series, and I think a big reason people, myself included, love Kingdom Hearts so much. And should this Disney Plus show happen, I hope the creators and showrunners take the utmost care with casting these characters, so that their legacies can continue to endure for an entire new audience. Who am I kidding? They're just gonna cast Chris Pratt again.
Hey guys, what is going on? Devin here. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. This was, per usual, a lot of hard work to put together, but I'm really happy with how this one turned out. As indicated by the opening title card of this video is part of March Caprice 3, the giant Kingdom Hearts community event that has brought the entire community together to celebrate Kingdom Hearts through videos, fan art, fan fiction, cosplay, music, anything you can think of. It's all happening on marchcaprice.com. I put a link below to it for you guys to go check out, as well as a playlist to all the other videos from other creators who are taking part in the event. It's really exciting, and I'm really honored to be part of the event this year, and to those of you at this event who are checking out the channel for the first time, I hope you liked what you saw here, and if you did like the video, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications, because YouTube has no idea what it's doing anymore. And be sure to follow Shadow Shoveler Productions on both Twitter and on TikTok at Shadow Shoveler for more on yours truly, and until the next video, I'd say that's about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a happy March Caprice. The bows out.